What is up, guys? This is QRem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm going to bring all of you guys my Lunalight deck profile post-Invasion Vengeance. Now then, we still didn't get Crimson Fox. Huh. Like, the heck, Konami? Where's Crimson Fox? Okay, I digress. Moving on, yeah, Lunalight's got better actually with this past set, like, believe it or not, even if we didn't get Crimson Fox yet. And that's primarily because of a pretty cool extra deck monster that was in Invasion Vengeance. But I'll get to that when we get into the extra deck. But yeah, moving on, let's just jump right into this deck profile, starting off with the main deck as per usual. Alrighty then, so for the Lunalight lineup, it's actually a little bit different than this time around. We have 3 copies of Blue Cat, like, of course, the beginning isn't going to be that different, but we'll get to the difference in a second. We have 3 copies of Blue Cat because Blue Cat is, like, probably the best Lunalight again. Like, the ability to try and keep you alive through her floating effect is really, really strong, as well as she has the ability to really just help you pump out insane amounts of damage as well. So, generally, we need to have 3 copies of Blue Cat because she's pretty darn good. Moving on, we have 3 copies of the Black Sheep because, excuse me, that voice crack was atrocious. We have 3 copies of Black Sheep because Black Sheep does search out our polymerization. That's pretty relevant again because this is a fusion deck. And also just having the ability to recycle certain Lunalights from your grave or face up in your extra deck as well is pretty nice also. So yeah, we have 3 copies of the Black Sheep because she's pretty good. Moving on, we have 3 copies of the White Rabbit. Now, White Rabbit is going to be your Wolf Bark, of course, and the ability to just giant Trinity cards in your opponent's side of the field as well as have that Wolf Bark ability is pretty darn nice, and you really can't complain about it. So yeah, we have 3 copies of the White Rabbit. Then, moving on to the Pendulum Lunalights, we have 3 copies of Tiger, because, you know, Monster Warning is pretty good, I hear. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Lunalight Tiger. And then finally, for the last Lunalight, we have 2 copies of Wolf. Now, this is where it gets kind of weird, because first of all, we have only 2 copies of Wolf, because I really do feel like 3 copies is a little bit much now. Like, the fact is that you don't want to ever really draw Wolf. You only want to search Wolf when you can make the big Wolf play into something relevant. And because of that, I really felt like 3 was pretty bad, because you don't want to draw Lunalight Wolf, as I said, because like, there are times when Lunalight Wolf is actually bad, believe it or not. Like, Wolf can be a bad card when you don't really have resources in your graveyard to fuse away, and you only, again, really want to see Wolf when you do, so you can try and do something crazy like make 2 Leo Dancers in a turn. But regardless, we only have 2 copies of Wolf because 3 I just feel is a little bit too much. And really fast, I'm not running Purple Butterfly. The reason is because, first of all, if you guys have watched my previous Lunalight decks, I have said multiple times that the Purple Butterfly isn't very good of a card. In all honesty, you only would have to run it because there's another level 3 to make rank 3s with. But in substitute for Purple Butterflies, I actually am running a Speedroid engine this time around, because these guys are like the best rank 3 engine ever. Like, oh my god. Like, the reason why we're running Terratop is because it's a 1-card Break Sword, and that's rather relevant because Break Sword can do things like get rid of problem cards from your opponent's side of the field, as well as help you trigger your Blue Cats or your Lunalight Tigers proactively. So because of that, actually, first of all, you're of course going to mitigate Break Sword's cost, which is really nice, so Break Sword does become a +1, but the ability to cycle cards often on your field, like through Blue Cats or Tigers, is pretty nice because you get extra value out of those cards because you start fueling your graveyard with resources, or you start getting more cards from your graveyard as resources. And in general, like, I feel like this rank 3 engine is pretty darn good in this deck. And actually, believe it or not too, it also helps Lunalights going first as well, because with the Speedroid engine, if worse comes to worse and you are going first, you can just use Terratop to make a Totem Bird, and Totem Bird is just generally a pretty okay turn 1 play. So because of that, in general, I feel like the Speedroids really do help this deck out a lot. So yeah, that is why we are running them. And then, of course, finally, for the last 2 monsters, we have 2 copies of Max C because it's just really good this format, and we want to try and draw extra cards in this combo-heavy deck. So yeah, we have 2 copies of Max C to round off our monster lineup. Moving on to our spells, of course, this is where it gets pretty normal. We have 3 copies of Poly because polymerization is just really, really good, and of course, this is a fusion-based deck, so you need polymerization, right? Moving on, we have 3 copies of the Fusion Recovery because just having more free +1s in this deck that help you get back resources is really, really important. So we have 3 copies of Fusion Recovery for that. Then we have 3 copies of Tenki because this card searches out everything bar Lunalight, Wolf, the Speedroids, and Max C. So because of that, that's pretty good. Then we have 3 copies of Lunalight Perfume because Perfume is just, again, another monster born that we can use. And the ability to actually search out Lunalight Wolf with this card is pretty nice as well. Moving on, we have 2 copies of the Fusion Tag because Fusion Tag is like, again, it helps you get into Leo Dancer a little bit more consistently. But the thing is, I don't run 3 copies again in this deck because similarly to Lunalight Wolf, you won't be going into your big Wombo Combo Lunalight Leo Dancer play as often anymore because in this build of Lunalights, you do have kind of an alternative fusion monster that you usually will be summoning a lot more often. So because of that, I feel like 3 copies of Fusion Tag is a little bit more cloggy now. And again, you still have to run this card though, because again, it does make Leo Dancer a lot more consistently. But I just feel like 3 is a little bit much nowadays, so that is why I only have 2 copies of it. Alrighty then, finally for the last couple of spells, we have just straight draw power now. We have 3 copies of Allure of Darkness because like everything, again, bar the Pendulum, Lunalights, and Maxian Terratop are all dark, so just having more ways to cycle through your cards are pretty cool. And then of course, finally for the last spells, we have 3 copies of Pot of Desires because this card is broken. Like I'm gonna say it again. There's no replacement for this card. Don't ask. Like, I get it. Lunalights are a budget deck, but if you're me, if you guys are like me, where you have these budget-ish kind of decks for funsies on the side, and you have the good cards to throw in them anyway, I would, right? Like, really, why would you not make a deck as good as you can? So yeah, sorry for going off on that tangent, but yeah, that'll be it for the entire 40 card main deck. And I understand that I'm blasphemous before anyone points it out in the comments. I get it. I'm not running Upstart this time around, and that's because I didn't know what else to cut, believe it or not, to make this deck 40 cards. So yeah, I'm a heretic in this deck profile. But moving on, we're gonna go right into the extra deck. Alrighty, so first of all, we have 2 copies of Cat Dancer. I still hate this card, like, with a passion, like, for real. Like, the fact that this has an effect that can get Solemn Strike for literally no reason is just, it's aggravating. Like, there's no other word to describe it, but it's terrible. But still, though, you have to run Cat Dancer for a fusion tag target, and if you do end up going into the big fusion climbing play into Leo Dancer, you do need to summon a Cat Dancer eventually, so because of that, you have to still run 2 copies, even though I really, really wish that I could get away with only running 1, because again, this card really sucks, but again, you just still gotta at least run 2 because you need it for certain plays. Moving on, we have 2 copies of Panther Dancer, again, for a fusion tag target, and Panther Dancer is significantly better than Lunalight Cat Dancer, so because of that, you gotta run 2 Panthers, just again, because it's better to sit on this than this card, so because of that, we still have to run 2. So yeah, we have 2 copies of Panther. Then finally, for the last Lunalight fusion, we have, oh, you guys saw the cool part there. The sneak peek, guys, sneak peek. You still gotta run 2 copies of Leo Dancer because Leo Dancer is still really, really good. Like, Leo Dancer is probably the primary win condition of this deck still. Like, the ability to just throw out 7,000 damage on the board, and that can also Raigeki your opponent's board too, is pretty freaking insane. Like, all I wish is that Leo Dancer was just slightly easier to summon, but I could understand where it would get a little bit ridiculous if it was. So, yeah, we still gotta run 2 copies of Leo because Leo is just your big boss mama of the deck. And then, yeah, from that sneak peek that you guys just saw there, we have 2 copies of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon now in this deck. This card is pretty cool, like, I'm not gonna lie. The thing is with this card is that, first of all, it can get really big, and it is essentially a Lunalight Cat Dancer replacement with how easy it is to summon in this deck. Because to make Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, you only need 2 non-token dark monsters on your side of the field to fusion summon him. And that's not hard to do at all in this deck because your usual bread and butter combo on your first turn in this deck is involving White Rabbit and Black Sheep, where you can do a fusion summon from those 2 on board for free and make a free fusion monster basically without losing card economy. So because of that, making Starving Venom Fusion Dragon isn't that hard, and if its effects just read the card, guys. This card is pretty good. Like, the ability to just throw out really big attack monsters on your field, which is 2 copies of this guy, just no problem, is pretty freaking strong. And the ability to also just, again, Raigeki your opponent's field, or even potentially take one of your opponent's monsters' effects and put it on Fusion Dragon is pretty cool as well. So, in general, yeah, he's just, like, I really feel like he helped this deck out a lot because, again, it solves the problem of you, like, forcing yourself to make this card every so often because you have no other play. Now you actually have a rather good card to go into if you're forced to in that situation where you kind of only can make Cat Dancer, as this is now an alternative option that is like 100% better than Cat Dancer. So yeah, we have 2 copies of Fusion Dragon, which is pretty darn good. Then moving on to the XEs is just pretty much its rank 4s and supporting cards for the Terror Top and stuff. We have one copy of Breaksword because it's really good. We have one copy of Levier to act as a combo piece if you ever do Lunalight Wolf and then you want to get something back with it. We have one copy of Tonenberg because like I said, worst comes to worst, you can just make this with the Terror Top and it's still pretty good. We have one copy of Dimedar because Dimedar has some pretty cool synergies with Blue Cat in this deck. We have one copy of Castel because just swap removal. We have one copy of Dweller because just we don't like Burning Abyss, Phantom Knights, and whatever graveyard effects are around. And then finally for the last Xyz monster, we have one copy of Daigusto Phoenix because every so often it might come up. Because in theory, this card actually comes up if your opponent doesn't have a board, and you can do that Black Sheep White Rabbit play because this actually puts out the most damage potential. Because again, like I said, if your opponent has no board, this card actually does more damage to your opponent than this card does. So just that's why I feel like you still got to run this card at least at one. So yeah, that will be it for this entire Lunalight deck profile. I did try and get this deck profile done as quickly as possible this time around, but sadly I still didn't make this deck profile sub 10 minutes. But still, I hope this deck profile did help you guys out, and I hope you guys do try and explore deck building with Lunalights, as I really do feel like even if this deck is kind of linear, there is quite a few cool deck building routes that you can go to, like with mine and Speedroids today. So again, I hope you all very much did enjoy this video, and as always, this is QRem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.